G'day everyone. You know, unless you've been in hibernation since 1962 and just woke up, you'll be aware that Seiko have a 5-sportsmatic lineup which offers countless variations and designs that have evolved over the years. And while a few of these models get nothing more than a passing glance, there are some that become insanely popular amongst collectors, reviewers, and even the every person. But in lieu of the praises for the retro Seiko 5 pieces, there are equal parts criticism, especially towards their aging hardware and less than desirable specifications. So let's get a piece of that action and review the Seiko SNXS73, which I'll now just refer to as a 73. So here's the specs list of all the details, including physical dimensions, weight, water resistance, crystal, movement, and price. One thing I'll mention is that I picked up the J model of the 73, so if you want to save around $10, you can opt to get the K model instead. So I feel we should address the elephants in the room and start with the obvious negatives of this watch. And straight off the bat, the most glaring one for me is that bracelet. It removes arm hairs better than some devices, sounds more jangly than loose change in your pocket, has a flimsy pressed metal clasp with no release button, so enjoy giving your fingers an extra workout, hollow end links, folded links, and one of the fiddliest release mechanisms to adjust the bracelet size. If I had to say anything nice about it, at least it has the Seiko logo stamped into the clasp, and it's got 6 micro adjustments. But if you're thinking about replacing it with another bracelet or strap, bear in mind that the lug width is 19mm, so it will limit your purchasing choices, but I'll touch back on that later. Rounding out the list of foibles, you've only got 30 meters of water resistance, so I wouldn't expose this to anything beyond dishwashing duty. And unsurprisingly at this price range, you've also got a Hardlex crystal, so be wary on how rough you treat this watch. And given these lightweight specifications, this relegates the 73 more towards dress watch detail than it does sports. So if the plan is to get something that can be worn on the playing field, this isn't the right choice, especially when you see how polished that case is too. And continuing that low spec theme is the use of an archaic 7S26 automatic movement. Indeed, this is still a robust Seiko movement that has been praised by others as a workhorse, but one that's definitely showing its age more thanks to the absence of any hacking and hand winding. This not only affects accuracy when trying to set the perfect time, but also means you need to give it the old Seiko shuffle to get it up and running. The total case thickness of the 73 isn't that much, but the presence of that thick display case back needlessly adds thickness to the watch size, gives it a more bulky appearance when viewed side on, and, as one reviewer commented, makes it look like a flying saucer. As far as wearability goes, it doesn't faze me much, but I will touch on that later. And one final negative against the 73 is the fact that it now has competition in the form of the newer SRPK models, an evolution of the SNXS series. Time will tell whether this new model will completely usurp the 73 and its older brethren, but at a glance it has noticeable improvements, including 100 meters of water resistance, a more wearable bracelet, modern movement that hand winds and hacks, and a slightly more flexible 18mm lug width. The case and dial certainly have a more modern look, but whether that's a good thing or not depends on the beholder. And that last comment helps me steer away from the negatives of the 73 and look at some other features that are more mixed feelings. Comparisons have been drawn between the SNXS models and the Rolex Perpetual series, and this could lead to some just writing off the 73 as a cheap Rolex homage. But two things I should mention are that if it were to be judged as a homage, at least it shows a very handsome example to mimic. And while I can see a lot of similarity between these watches, I feel there's just enough difference between them for the SNXS series to stand apart, especially for day-to-day complication and some of those indices and dial markings. Standing quite prominently under the Seiko logo on that dial is the old school 5 shield logo. It is what it is, and some may appreciate its sentimentality while others may find it outdated or, in my opinion, a little hokey. But at least its sizing on the dial is appropriate where it doesn't become overbearing, and as a nice quality touch it is applied, not printed. The crown is laughably small, and this, along with its recess into the case, can make it difficult to pull out and adjust, especially if you have fat fingers or non-existent fingernails. But on the plus side, once you've got a grip on it, adjusting the date and time is a pleasure, where the day and date wheels snap nicely into place and the hands turn smoothly when rotating the crown. And with the crown sitting almost flush with the case, it not only gives the 73 a more streamlined appearance, but also avoids any unnecessary bumps against it. And speaking of cases, the dimensions of the 73 are a bit on the minuscule side, especially if that lug-to-lug bet doesn't get much higher than 42mm. Simply put, if you love small watches or have smaller wrists, you'll like this, but if you like bigger watches, you'll be dodging this model. The stock photos of a 73 on many sales websites give the dial a very white background, but in the flesh it definitely leans more towards a silvery light grey colour. And when you have silver hands on a silvery dial, legibility can be an issue in certain conditions. In the worst lighting scenarios, that wafer-thin seconds hand will become invisible, but the hour and minute hands have enough thickness and presence so you won't lose them completely. And even in low light conditions, the lume on those hands and the applied rectangular indices help keep things legible. And that lume is the perfect segue into the pros of the 73, and true to Seiko form, you get a decent amount of lubribrite here. For a bit of fun, I put it up against a low-hitting diver and my Seiko diver, and it came in second place. Unsurprisingly, the Seiko diver reigned supreme, but that lume on the 73 is mighty impressive. And while it might sound like an exaggeration, the 73 is an incredibly handsome watch. The clean dial takes on different hues when exposed to different lighting conditions, with a slight sunburst silver in bright environments and a duller grey in darker areas, making it both elegant and interesting to gaze at. And that's also helped by the appropriate and well-executed sizing of the other dial features, such as the minutes track running on the edge of that dial, the indices that are thick enough to be noticed but not crowding the look, the applied Seiko logo just under the 12 marker that stands proud like a Lilliputian warrior, and the just legible printed automatic and 21 joules text sitting above the 6 indice. The day-date complication at the 3 o'clock is just big enough to be read clearly, and the addition of the window frame around it adds a touch of class and viewing orientation to it. The baton hour and minute hands are thick enough to tell the time at a glance, and the length is suitable, with the hour hand sitting just under the applied indices, and the minute hand reaching out just under the minute track. And because it's a J version, rounding it out is the microscopic printed text at the bottom reading Made in Japan, along with its movement specifications. And while I wouldn't recommend getting rough or wet with the 73, this piece can be worn in a lot of other subdued settings, including the office, the bar, the park, or even around the house. And remember how I mentioned the undesirable lug width and bulbous caseback? Well, thanks to the popularity of the SNXS series, it seems a lot of vendors have been listening and creating and selling parts and accessories dedicated to improving its lot. The bracelet, as you can probably tell in my example, is not the original and was purchased from AliExpress for around $40 Australian. And not only does it feel a lot more comfortable, but it gives the 73 a more interesting vintage look. And if you've got the time and skills, you can buy other upgrades to pimp your Seiko, including slimmer casebacks, sapphire crystals, and an NH36 movement for that hacking hand-winding experience. These options can allow you to enjoy the original SNXS design with the most modern trimmings, like having a cake and eating it too. So at the time of this video, I'm inclined to echo the sentiment of most other viewers and say that this older SNXS model is still relevant. And if you're looking for a casual and slightly dressy watch with a timeless appearance and horological significance that won't break the bank, it's a good buy and one I would happily recommend, so long as you source a replacement for that bracelet. But keep in mind that I did say at the time of this video, once the newer SRPK models become available and eventually, in theory, drop in price, and the older discontinued SNXS series becomes harder to obtain and, again in theory, climb in price, then there will eventually come a time when that sentimentality will give way to better pricing and more modern looks and practicality. But for now, like many others, I'm going to keep enjoying wearing this piece for a long time to come. If you've owned or still wear an older SNXS model, I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. And if you like my content and haven't done it yet, a like and subscribe always helps. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching, eh?